Russ Fyfe. We're excited to see so many people, such a popular topic, and so Russ has a lot of great information to share. I'm Amanda Chaco, for those of you that don't know me. Lots of new faces. So I just want to tell you a little bit about where you are. This is the Surge Center, and Surge is part of Lakeshore Advantage. Lakeshore Advantage is the economic development organization for Ottawa and Allegheny County, and we work with companies from startup to grown up. So from concept to the big corporations like Gentex, really helping companies to launch and grow, create jobs, and have a vibrant economy in our area. So the Surge Center is our business incubator / startup hub. We work with entrepreneurs in areas of high tech, high growth, and product. And we have all kinds of programs and resources to support them through each of the stages of their development. This location here, we're really trying to build a startup ecosystem within this space. So we have entrepreneurs and also those that help entrepreneurs. We have mentors, service providers, and again, really trying to create that support. So if you have any questions, I will be around and I could chat with you after. If you have an idea, want to get involved at all, or know anyone that's working on a startup in our region, we would love to help them. So, but we're gonna go over to Russ now. Russ is a tech entrepreneur. He's been part of the startup ecosystem for probably at least a decade, I would say.
Boy. Yeah, I guess
He has started his own companies. He's worked with other startups, consulted with businesses. He's been a mentor and a coach for our entrepreneurs for a number of years, and we're really honored to have him as part of our community and here today. So I'm gonna hand it over to Russ. Please welcome.
Hi everyone. Thank you for coming, by the way. I just want to say I'm so glad to see that there are so many people interested in no code, interested in building their own apps. It's not just me and a couple people that I bump into on the street. So I hope you all got to know each other a little bit, and yeah, look forward to building apps together as we start this conversation, right? Discovering no code is the topic, so we're keeping this kind of low, high level, making sure that we kind of cover a lot of like what no code is, the landscape, and then I'm going to show you a couple of like different tools that I use and also recommend for doing no code in general. A little bit about me, Russ Fyfe. I'm a no code, low code guy. I graduated from Hope with a computer science degree, I guess a decade ago, yeah, I'm a product manager, so that's what I do full time, and I use all of my no-code, low-code experience to, apply it to all these startups that I work at. Some of that history is here. Started a company called RingCam, and built that with WordPress and a bunch of Zapier, all these other no-code tools, and we grew that to success at some point, right? Next Door Photos, I was a director of technology. Built all their internal products and really just built that to scale. So we used a mix of WordPress, Jira, a bunch of QuickBooks integrations, a lot of other things. And this is a $10 million plus company. McKinney Vento, we built that. I was there for about a year when I was doing product consulting. We built it in WordPress and a bunch of other tools like Discourse and etc. A bunch of other tools I don't want to go into, but now that's we launched that maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and that's a really successful startup here in West Michigan as well. It's a homeless youth kind of tool, connecting tool. And then RainPlan is where I currently work today. We are a startup based out of Maryland, Washington D.C. area. We use Bubble and a bunch of, and WordPress and software and Airtable. It's kind of where we're building no code to scale at start, and trying to scale it as far as we can before we need to go a next level of high code, right? So it's a little bit about me, my experience. So let's talk about no code. What is it and why is it great? So no code. You guys are probably already no coders, and so if this is something new to you, I'd love to talk to you after. But no code is it can be a tool, it's a methodology, and it's a movement where programming that doesn't necessarily involve writing code. So if statements, semicolons, that type of code, right? But instead it uses intuitive interfaces to drag and drop builders and that kind of thing, right? You can build an entire app by dragging and dropping buttons, text, and that kind of stuff. Yeah, you guys are probably already no-coders. Here's some of the things that are really popular in that space. WordPress, like 50% of the internet runs on WordPress. Shopify is an e-commerce no-code tool. Google Forms is a type of no-code tool. These are some CRMs that do a lot of what we call as no-code as well. They're tools that support you. And Squarespace is like a website builder, right? I mean, just ask, raise your hands. Are you guys familiar with no-code, or like, have you guys used these tools? Just raise your hands. Yeah? Okay, if you haven't, that's great too. All right, it's easier than ever. So this is why. Why no-code and why now? It's easier than ever to build no-code. According to data from W3 Techs, which is like W3 Schools, like WordPress is 43% of the internet, and the market size has gone from like 5 billion in 2018 to 52 billion in 2024. So what that means is there's just so many new no-code tools coming out. I can hardly keep up with all the new things that are worth looking into and just launching a new app or rebuilding my app in this new tool. But yeah, it's easier than ever, and it's like a great time to start if you're interested. So how can I use no code? I want to make sure we connect this to what you guys are doing. So what no code is really great at is prototyping, getting in front of the user faster. So it doesn't have to be the center of your app. You can make prototypes that are separate from, let's say, your enterprise solution. You might have, we do this at RainPlan. We have our bubble, our main application, and then we spin off multiple prototypes by functional area where they can go test certain things that they're interested in and wanting to add to the app without going through a full dev process and that kind of thing. So we have like 3 or 4 prototypes going at once while we still have our main app running. Prototyping, automating. So a lot of people are working in, you just want to automate certain things in your processes, in your day-to-day, in your work environment. You can automate stuff with just using a couple no-code tools. Launching is also a big deal. You can launch something. You don't need to build something and keep it to yourself. No-code, a lot of these no-code tools are built with the intent to launch it in front of users and get their feedback faster. So don't limit yourself to that. What is no-code not great at? To set your expectations. Launching a perfect product. 1, it doesn't exist, a perfect product. And 2, you shouldn't expect that from no-code in the least bit. It's not frustration-free. You will be frustrated with your no-code app. You will always be trying to make it better. And there's a lot to learn when you're doing some of that stuff. Cost-effective at scale is also what it's not. So when you do no-code, expect the first 80% to come very quickly and the last 20% to come very slowly, right? The Pareto's principle applies very much so in no-code. So the 80-20 rule, which is what I talk about here. So 80% of your app will take 20% of your time. 20% of your app will take 80% of your time. I also want to stress, don't let this prototype or tool hinder what you want your user to go through and what their needs are. But yeah, this is just something to keep in mind as you're looking at these no-code tools.
What do you mean by cost effective?
Yeah. So again, cost effectiveness, right? So once you build 80% of your app solution, you're solving 80% of the problem, and then you want it to do that one extra thing. That one little thing that you didn't, it doesn't do well, and it's maybe a must-have requirement. You're gonna have to spend money, maybe to bend the app a little bit, right? So every no-code solution comes out of the box with a set of tools, a set of really clear how you should use this app, and then there's this whole other side. You're like, okay, I can edit the CSS here. Shopify does this really well in WordPress. You can kind of go in and hire a developer to modify that code in the back end a little bit, and now you're kind of bringing it to that 85% solution, and then you add a little bit more code, you got that 90% solution, so it's kind of that intuitive, like that growing pains of business, and it's also being adaptable, right? So when you start scaling, you have bigger problems related to data, hosting, and all these other things. Those are things that are unavoidable, and but a good thing. You've gotten to a point where you're breaking the app, right? That's kind of the goal with no code a little bit. All right, so I want to talk about no code prep. So if you were to go right in and try to start looking at all the different tools and landscapes, it's pretty overwhelming. So it's really important that you kind of come into the landscape prepared into building an app in general, right? Maybe you come into it with a certain expectation, and you find out, hey, maybe no code's not for me. I'm just going to go right to the full bore solution, right? So here's what I'll say. Don't want to build this app in a day, and no code is the day, right? So don't build Rome in an app. So focusing on what problem I'm solving for my user, what are my must-haves, could-haves, should-haves, want-to-haves. This is just a method for looking at how to build apps in general, right? So you can approach this, just come up with a list of what this app must have, should have, could have, want to have. You'll also find out that as you're making this list and you're looking at the no-code solutions, that a lot of those features will like just come out of the box. You might have all your want-to-haves and like one of your must-haves, and that's a kind of a big win in some cases. Also with no code, appreciate the iterations and launch sooner. So get feedback from your users and build what they want with no code apps versus guessing and checking. Oh, you know what? I want to make sure I talk manual processes. Part of the no code solution and in prototyping and in the lean startup is building stuff and then having some manual processes in between, right? So create a solution that looks really well on paper and to your user, but understand that maybe you got to go back, take that form that they filled out, and you're going to go connect them to the other side of your marketplace app, or you're going to do that phone call setup for the scheduling, right? Don't let the no-code app be the blocker to making your user have a success or meet their goals. So please consider keeping manual processes in your app as you're starting out. Draw it out. Simply put, you will save a lot of time, answer a lot of questions that you would ask yourself and expect out of the tool. If you draw out just a couple screens of the app, grab a piece of paper, a pen, draw a couple screens, look at your favorite websites, Zillow, Amazon, Airbnb, draw what you want to see in your app, and it'll save you a lot of time, and it'll actually help you pick out the tool and the suite of tools that you're looking for. So that'll also allow you to categorize. What I'm talking about with categorization is like nowadays when you build an app, there's usually a bucket it falls in, right? You're not really creating something new. You're like creating the Uber for food delivery, right? Oh, and then you got Uber Eats. But like, you know, you're creating those types of solutions. So sometimes, if you can, categorize it in one of these buckets. There's plenty more that you can, but what you'll end up finding is you could, with this no-code landscape being so massive now, you could find marketplace for farmers markets in Colorado, and you'll find like 3 no-code solutions out there that are catered to those certain elements, right? Not super important, but then you can take that application of what bucket you're in and apply like your unique value to it. So, all right. Selecting your tools. So, the landscape is pretty massive, guys. And I don't want to bore you with every single app on here. And there are so many. This is just some of all those no-code tool solutions. And here's kind of like a way that I like to split them up. Okay, we have high interface flexibility and low interface flexibility. I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. Low data flexibility and high data flexibility. So what does that mean? So for example, Squarespace. It's a website builder that allows you to have a lot of, it has low interface flexibility, so you're kind of stuck with what they have in blocks, right? And you can't really access the data of like users that sign in, sign up. You can't really pull that information out. I'll talk a little bit about that soon in more detail. But these are just some of the tools: Airtable, Bubble, Webflow, some of the apps out there. Yeah, there's a lot of choices. Here are some popular ones. To slim it down a little bit, if you were to talk about Airtable, Bubble, Glide, Google Sheets, any one of these apps on here, these are like the buzzword apps that are really popular. Yeah, these are some of them. All right, now I'm gonna break them down. So, since there's so many choices, I've kind of created grids, guys. I think we're all a little bit technical here, so I hope this will help us make some choices. So, you can kind of break down by difficulty on this side, easiest to hardest, or least costly, least willing to scale, most willing to scale. All right. Technical data, it's really easy. You can use Squarespace. There's some stuff there that makes it really easy. Shopify is a great technical data tool, but keeps it pretty, you're not very flexible. Airtable, extremely flexible, but you're starting to get more technical thinking, and you really gotta have like kind of that technical mindset and background, or the willingness to learn. It goes all the way to Bubble. Bubble's another app tool, right? More flexibility and more powerful as you go out, but you have to have the skill set to do that. Designability. So if you're a designer, there's two main thinkings when it comes to no code. You have your block builders, and then you have your blank canvases. A blank canvas is like Figma, or like I can draw a line on the screen and it'll show up on the screen. Block builders are, here are the 5 blocks that you can play with. You can't really change the shape of that button. You can change the color, but you can't change the shape, right? Those are the types of different design flexibilities. Softer, incredibly fast, incredibly intuitive, but you're limited in your flexibility, right? You can build a marketplace app in 3 hours in Softer, where people can log in, can have everybody and users signing up, but right, you're kind of limited by design. Where Bubble is a blank canvas. You want a line there, you can draw a line there. And then everything in between. WordPress, cost. Simply put, you got WordPress. It's an open source tool, very popular as a result. Softer, Airtable, Bubble, Webflow, they're all kind of more or less cost effective. They're not more than $50 a month more times than not. So cost is kind of a mootish point, except to scale. So when we talk about scale, when you want to launch a $10 million company with hundreds of users, thousands of users going through it, Softer is not probably your best bet. And Softer, yeah, Squarespace, Airtable kind of goes along the side. Self-explanatory there. So I just want to show here, these are your core no-code tool. You're gonna have your main site that you'll have and you'll use, like WordPress. It's a main core site that you'll use. Bubble might be another one, Airtable might be another. And there's a ton of additional services out there that support that to kind of expand that specific no-code solution. Zapier, Stripe, some of you used Calendly before. That's a way to create a scheduling tool within your app, right? Stripe is a way to collect payments in your app, no matter what app you're using. Intercom chatbots and text message sending, you can use an app called Twilio, right? So,
what's Zapier?
Zapier is a way to connect things that happen on Shopify to WordPress or to Bubble or to Webflow, right? Wherever you're having data go through, you can use Zapier to send it anywhere else, right? It's kind of like when it comes to data sending, there's like call center model, right? If you want Shopify to call WordPress and tell them what happened on Shopify, you hire Zapier to handle the calls between Shopify and WordPress, right? So otherwise they can't talk to each other. But again, like just so that you guys are aware, once you pick your tool, you don't have to be limited by what its options are. You can bring out a bunch of additional services that to support and expand that tool to meet certain needs that you're looking for, right? Some of your must-haves on your app.
Question in the back.
Yeah.
So, would you say, like, if we did like app and website, would these tools be very similar, or do you think these are all like very? Because like Squarespace and Shopify and I think websites. So is there some on here that are more app-driven versus web-driven? That's question one.
Yes.
Question two, if I could just add it on, because it
Yeah.
could be in the answer, is you talked about them talking together. Is there ones within here that are sort of like better integrators, meaning where they sit at the top, right, and then they have the best plugins? Like I've heard a lot about Shopify sort of like ecosystem, right, of like all these stuff you can add in and pay for. Is there,
Yes.
is everyone kind of serving that? Like everyone tries to do everything, or do some do that better than others?
So you got it, right? The more popular they are, and actually most no-code tools that are coming out, it's like a requirement for an API solution, like a third-party communication, way to communicate with each other. So that could be a plugin, that could be just having Zapier open. Nowadays, these individual tools will actually have their own way to communicate to other third-party tools. So you don't need to use a Zapier to communicate to one another. Your question about like web application, building a web app from the ground up versus a marketing site, right? There are some no-code tools that are perfect for a marketing-driven site like Squarespace. WordPress is kind of that unique situation where it was built to be a marketing tool, but with the amount of plugins and the community around it, you can make it do any app. You can make it be a web app, e-commerce app, an e-commerce web app, right? You can do all the different ways. So it really depends on the tool. And the more popular tool is, and I can show you like that G2 crowd. Are you guys familiar with G2 crowd? Maybe not. There's like a whole, I'll send you guys a link if you guys are interested. It shows you like popularity by market and all that. And the more popular they are, the more interested. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Russ, if you like go back to the categorization slide.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, this one? Yeah. Oh.
Go back.
One more?
Where is like project management versus. Go two more. Oh, wow. There you go. So this is the best place to start. Is to look at what category you're in and what you're trying to build, and then just do a Google search or go to G2 Crowd, which Russ can talk more about, and then you can see all the different alternatives that exist for that purpose. Like we're trying to build a marketplace. Here's the 4 no-code tools that are best for building a marketplace, and start there. Russ is kind of showing like all the tools that are out there, and some of them are going to be for building websites, some are going to be for handling payments, and there's a bunch of different things out there. But if you start with, what is the core category, then you can find like the 4 most popular no-code tools that are out there, and then look at who has the biggest community, who has the most integrations, and then choose one that's best for you.
That's right. Great way to say it. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey Russ.
Go ahead.
Just a question on kind of that combination. So if you think about building from code, there are these open source repos like GitHub, right? That you can go and you can find sample applications that kind of do what you want. You can use those as examples. Is there a similar kind of thing for no code where I can go to a website and get a formula for if you put these 3 apps together, these no code apps together in this way with these tools, you can build this kind of app?
That's a great question. I don't think there's one out there.
All right.
Now,
We'll put a team on that.
That's a great idea. I think people would love to have that. And as the no-code landscape expands, it's kind of maturing, I think, at this point. The last couple of years, things have like expanded. Like I'm using 3 apps that didn't exist 2 years ago for my solution at RainPlan, and it's just kind of one of those things where if you were to build that, it'd be out by the time it's done being built, it'd be outdated. It's all the new tools. But that being said, you could probably find, going back to that slide, a marketplace. Like if you can't categorize one of these things, you might as well build a no-code tool to fill that gap for those three things, right? Build the marketplace that includes drivers, right? That would be a successful, probably no-code company, a driver-based marketplace thing. So, yeah. Any more questions? Yeah.
Add another thing is that we're right now in a phase of no code where there's a couple products that are getting a lot of believers behind them, and those become the center of the universe, and all these other things will integrate with it. So like people who, they're called bubblers, people who build on Bubble, like they will say start with Bubble for everything, and then look for all the integrations that work with it, and they'll say never use WordPress or whatever. They're just like zealots. They're firm believers in that technology. So that's what kind of makes it hard to find like all the recipes that are out there, because people start with their data warehouse of choice, which is going to be like Bubble or WordPress.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, WordPress. I was a zealot for WordPress, and then I got into Bubble, and now I'm like, oh, they're great. They're both great for their own ways, but
Just to build on the question back about,
Yeah.
are any of these tools, can you distribute the app as a smartphone application in the app marketplace, or is it all really more sort of desktop centric?
yeah. So that is like the newest thing coming out of no-code tools. They haven't really nailed the web, like the application in the App Store situation yet. There are a bunch of ones that came out recently that are trying to do that really well. And there's a lot of no-code tools like Bubble that say, hey, take the mobile version of this site and you can turn it into an app if you do these certain things, right? But then you kind of have this like the app experience on your phone. I feel like there's a high standard. And so a lot of these no-code tools aren't at the high standard that you'd expect out of a native app yet, but you can start building your web app, building your data, start with your users, and then whenever the no-code app for native for Android and Apple comes out, you flip the switch and it's ready to go, right? No-code is all about like being able to transfer and jump to some extent from your different no-code tools to accommodate the newest one, but also what your users are looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of going on that, there's a platform called Buddy Boss, and Buddy Boss is known for being like a very good theme builder for like communities, like social media type, but they also do things for like, they have like a nice theme for like education platforms, like Udemy, if you're trying to do a Udemy. And one of their other things that they're known for is like their app builder. So there's kind of like basically a no-code app builder too. And then, but they have, the downside is that they're expensive, but they do have that, they push it to the stores. So that's kind of like the big draw for something like that. Like you can, once your app is done, you can push it straight to Google and Apple.
Yeah, so exactly. Buddy Boss is a WordPress plugin that enhances WordPress to be a social media app. And now you have a social media app using WordPress and Buddy Boss, the theme. You gotta pay Buddy Boss monthly in order to keep that theme up. And then you can probably pay an additional fee to put it on your app stores. But exactly the point I'm trying to make here with no code is make sure you get in front of the users. The money won't be an issue if you have users on the platform, because the money will, if you start actually having a successful app, the money kind of will come, or it makes sense to bring in money, right? Launching a $500 a month app with no users on the platform doesn't really make a lot of sense, right? I think for anybody. But hey, it doesn't cost you a lot to build that. In the short term, you don't have to spend $100,000 to build an app. You can launch a social media platform and validate it with your users in a month or 2 weeks, depending on, as we go. All right, let me see. I forgot where I'm at now. Oh, I want to make sure we're all clear on the same page. It's a prototype, right? At the end of the day, I recommend that when you're starting your first set of no-code stuff, just build something, pick one and build it. The skills you'll learn would transfer over very well, right? So the way that you build these apps, you're gonna realize once you've gone through 3 of them, which takes about 2 weeks, maybe 3, depending on how good you are, right, to get through, but then you kind of become like this intuitive no-coder. You're like, oh, is there a plugin marketplace for this? Oh, well, then I'm not going to use this tool, right? Or does it connect with Zapier? Instant no, I'm going to move on, right? And honestly, the entire marketplace thinks that way. Everybody that uses no-code will skip over the apps that don't accommodate those. So just pick one and go. But popular is better, you know? So, all right. I have a couple demos I want to show you guys. I made a couple apps yesterday to kind of show some of the tools and how they all kind of connect together. Oh, that's where that slide is. So, kind of what I was saying earlier, blank canvas apps and you have block builder apps, right? Slider A, you know, you can pick an image, you get that slider on those websites that everybody sees, right? A lot of UX is pretty intuitive nowadays. We're not reinventing the wheel with how a header bar works, how, you know, the things on the page happen. If you're unique, you're probably an artist and you shouldn't be building an app, right? That's kind of why these builders exist and why they work really well. Also makes building very fast, right? You're working with a blank canvas, you're drawing each line, you gotta be an artist, you gotta think that way too, right? That is one set of tools in the no-code marketplace to think about how they do their interfaces and then how they do their data management. I broke it out into 3 buckets. I think there's probably a better way. But we have accessibility, manageability, and editability. So how easily can I pull that data out of my tool? So to answer, some of you asked the question like, how can I pull, like WordPress data is not very easy to pull out of its back end. You have to like know code really pretty well in order to get that accessibility or use plugins or all this other stuff. Actually, it's kind of accessible, but not in the no code mindset, right? Manageability, so can I edit it all the time? Like if I add a coupon, can I add a coupon to my data? And it shows here, that's kind of the manageability. And then editability is like, can I see every individual row? And you know, Mark Freeman over there, he needs to change his email. Okay, I'm gonna type it in, I'm just gonna edit the code raw, right? Sometimes you need to do that, especially when you're no code and you're prototyping. Maybe not the best, but it's still available. So some of that, I kind of threw something. Airtable is really good at all 3. Google Sheets is really editable. Excel, very editable on a data level, but maybe not so great on accessibility and manageability. That's why people have CRMs and those, you know, Lakeshore Advantage, we transferred all their Excel docs into a CRM so that it was just as editable, but easier to manage and much more accessible, right, for everybody else. All right, so I made something called the Search Marketplace. So what I used is I used Airtable as my data warehouse, right? So all users, all services, and all that lives in Airtable. I used 2 interfaces. So I have the software interface that I'm going to show you and the Glide apps interface. So basically I built the app twice using the same set of data. And then I have a tool called Typeform. It's a really great onboarding tool that I'm just going to show. I actually didn't build it, but it's really effective for a lot of applications out there. If you start with Typeform, you're kind of building your first prototype, right? So, let's see. That's my data. So this is the Surge, the unofficial Surge marketplace. Okay. You can see here I have to update some of the branding, some of the logos, right? I used a template right out of the box. So there was a template in software called Marketplace. I selected it, and then it auto-populated all this stuff, right? So the intent here is that I wanted to build a marketplace for Surge mentors or people in the network that had services that they wanted to sell or give away, right? So UX UI design, web development, videography, product management, marketing, app development, right? These are services that this network can provide. Scroll, kind of like Fiverr, right? So if you guys are familiar with that app Fiverr, you can kind of scroll through. I wanted different services available. I want people to be able to change those and that kind of thing, right? Here are the freelancers, right? So I need services that these freelancers provide, and then people to provide those services. So this is all dummy data that was auto-populated. I added myself as a user. I signed up and had this built in like 30 minutes, right? I can log in. It auto builds a login page. It auto builds a sign up page. It's all here. So for example, too, if I want to buy some, read. Let's say I want to pay somebody to read me a book for an hour, which is the service that I provide on the network. It's $300 per hour. It must be Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter. And Luis at example.com is my email. You can hit pay now, and once I connect my payment processor, which I would probably select Stripe, it's the most popular one. It handles credit cards really well. I don't have to worry about the dangers of handling people's credit cards. That's what would appear. You'd see a Stripe checkout page, and then that's it. It's done. So let's look at the data behind this, right? So how this was all dummy data. It all lives here in this Airtable. So Airtable is no different than Excel, really, except the tabs are up here, where Excel has the tabs down here. Simply put, you can have different views to make it really easy to like filter data, right? You can have the approved. So these are all the approved services. So if you have a service provider create a service, this is all built out of the box. I'm just telling you what the pre-built stuff has. If the provider provides a service, I want to make sure that I approve them, right? So there's a cell all the way over here where I have to manually check to see if they're providing a service I want to provide on the platform. So if I click all, you'll see all of them are provided, but let's say I don't like this one, so I can switch that to no. And now it won't show up my software screen. If I don't like any I'm going negative here, but if I don't like one of these freelancers, or let's say I got a phone call, customer support, they want to change something, right? Fyfe, that guy, he actually doesn't do UX, UI design. He does product development and product management. So we're gonna get rid of that. I've just updated my app like that. And it'll show up on the website, front facing. I click the couple buttons that I need to. Oh yeah, you can see it's got tags built in on the last page. So these are the types of things too, where I'm like, oh cool, it's got little tags up there for my product development, product management, right? So those are like my want to haves that are already here built in, but not like my must have. It just happened to be there. I can rate myself, I guess, too. So, and then I can change my rating if I choose to. I can approve. So something that I didn't know until I built the app was that I have to approve every freelancer that comes on the platform. So I didn't even approve myself yet, but I'm still showing there. So I'd have to probably look into that. And then it's got a list of users, right? So this is different data. Sometimes they have freelancers that are different than users. You kind of got to learn the tools a little bit to understand, okay, Software designed this data architecture to be in 3 tabs with these different columns, and you'll kind of start to get the hang of like, oh, there's a setting called stars in Airtable that applies to software. Great. So software, I'm gonna go back here. Software is one interface that I used to display Airtable data, right? I can go backwards. I can build something in Airtable from the ground up first, then use software to display the data that I want it and the way I want it to look. I can use Airtable and then use Airtable's interface to display and make that data, make it editable and do it the way I want it to do things. Now, to really double down on that, oh, go ahead, Bryce. Yeah.
Just a quick question for you. So is it your recommendation that you start by thinking about like the structure of data and where your data is going to be stored, and then choose your interface later? Because you're having 2 examples here. Whereas if you like,
Yeah.
locked your data away in one tool and you didn't like that tool anymore, then your data's lost?
That's a great question. Which one do you start, right? Do you start with the data and then go interface? You start with the interface and go data. I think that it doesn't matter. I think the faster you do something, one side or the other, the faster it'll support the other. It's a teeter-totter game. You get the interface figured out, you realize all the data you need. You get the data figured out and you start putting in the interface, you realize, well, this interface can't accommodate it and I gotta add more data anyway, right? So there's kind of this back and forth. So you just gotta build anything in something and then realize how quickly it breaks, right? So the faster you realize how quickly it breaks, the faster you can improve your app, consider a different no-code app, or hire a developer to modify your application, right? Just that extra step if necessary, right? It might, because kind of right now, I could launch this software app today with everybody here and say, here's a sign-up link, sign up and we're gonna follow up with anything no-code related. But I think we're all smart enough here to have like connections, and so we'll use this tool to make that happen, right? I could have done something like that if I thought I had maybe a little more of that. But yeah, it's got all these pre-built features, and what's great about software is, I'm gonna show you the builder here. This is the block builder mindset. So here's a block. I can change the style. You know, I can mess with this stuff. Can change the colors to make it red and that kind of thing, right? If you guys have worked in anything like this, like there's just these set of selections and tools to break and make your app ugly and also make it look like your brand styling if you happen to have that by now, which good for you if you have that. Yeah, then they have like visibility here. So permissions is a big thing with like apps, especially when you're building marketplaces. I want this visible for certain users. I want this visible for other users. So it's usually the tool that you have to pick to know, all right, how am I going to be able to do these permissions? And it's like a lot of user error. Like that's kind of the building process here at no code.
How do you like to do with spam for false users or spam users?
What do I do?
Yeah, like.
If I ever have that happen, I'm like, wow, great, something's happening. But I guess I would go into Airtable and I would make sure, like, I'd have to probably add some CAPTCHA things, or I know Google has something, but I know in WordPress they have a plugin called a Kismet or something, and it'll help with the spam. It really depends how you're handling it. Yeah. So, let's see. I want to show now the same data in a different interface. Glide. Glide is this app I learned about yesterday. Just found out about it, but I thought it was really cool. I learned about it a couple years ago, but they were only working with Google Sheets. But now they work with Airtable, which I'm a huge fan of Airtable. And now I can just build the same app in software. I click 3 buttons, right? And I can do that here if we have time. Oh, I'm just talking really fast. Here's the same stuff, right? I can read you a book in an hour. Here on this view, it's got my Stripe payment link already there. I haven't even clicked, just to tell you how quickly this happened, like I haven't even clicked through all the interface yet. But
Is that data from Airtable?
that's the same data from
Okay,
Airtable.
so you just,
So must be Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter, right? That's the service I provide.
so Glide and software can connect to Airtable then.
The same thing, yeah. This is kind of the power of no code. You can have your data live here and you plug in as many interfaces as you want, right? Having that flexibility is becoming more and more easy. Like this Glide tool wouldn't have been possible a couple years ago. Software came out a year and a half ago, right? So, and it literally exists because Airtable exists. If Airtable didn't exist, that's their core data source. There's no way to build an app in software without Airtable. So there are tools being built on top of tools now, but that wasn't the case before. But I guess what I'm trying to show you here is this is kind of, somebody asked a question about like mobile apps. Glide has I think a set of tools to make it happen easier on mobile, and I'm sure you could do I bet they have some exporting thing to make it work on your app stores that you prefer. What's also great is now if you have a live app and you get that customer service call about the email being wrong, you can change it in Airtable and it updates on the app, right? How great, like, it's insane to think about. I built Android apps when I was in college, and if I were to do something like that, it would be, I'd have to go into a database that I ran and was spinning up and make that change. It's just so difficult. You can have an intern who answers customer service calls, go in and edit and update user data. Go ahead, yeah.
So it is probably more important to kind of select your data first, your data management, like somebody was asking that question.
Yes.
Because obviously that's the glue. I mean, obviously data is stored, but if you have that first, then you can just, like you said, switch from interface to interface or kind of check different interfaces to see which one you like. Or
you got it. So if you can somehow project what your data is supposed, if you have the technical skill set to get there first, go for it. Your data will evolve as fast as your business. So as soon as I launch this app and I get people logging in and using it, they might want comments. Now I have to rebuild and restructure maybe my whole Airtable app to accommodate comments or something, right? And then I gotta go through that whole product management process of prioritizing, all right, do I want comments or do I want this feature or that feature or that feature, right? So now you're thinking from a product-centered, user-centered perspective right out the gate. And yeah, you can spend months building out the right data architecture, but it's almost better to start with anything and then build the architecture from your users. So, but if you can, that'd be great, right? Yeah.
how does this compare to Bubble? Is this like
Yes.
similar?
So Bubble is kind of its own silo. So you can connect, so at RainPlan we use Bubble. And we use Airtable at the same time. So we do both. And what we have to do is take every piece of data that lives in Bubble and copy it to one of our data sources that we're using, right? All our user-generated data is in Bubble. And we send that information to our different tool suites, whether that's some other, like we actually are building some high code stuff in other like SQL database stuff, because data is the key. As you guys know, the more grasp you have on your data, the interface becomes less important. And that's really important for building a business when you have a full-time UX designer too, right? Yeah.
When it comes to scaling, and I get the idea, this is great for prototyping the concepts, right? So then I'm wondering, what, when you have an enterprise solution or bigger, things you're trying to solve, something like using Salesforce for, or maybe. So where do you think, or have you had experience where your quantity of data is like, okay, we're pushing it on this maybe record amount, quality or quantity, versus going like, now we're gonna scale this to and transfer this to a Salesforce, for example?
Yeah, so Salesforce is an ERP, and if you're familiar with like ERPs are like the software to rule all softwares. You can run every part of your business on an ERP from start to finish. So I always like Salesforce is great, but I would say, like, to answer your question, to get to scale, right? If you have a data warehouse that blows Airtable up, right, or does something like that, you probably need to, this might not be the right solution out the gate. But there are tools that you can use, like I think there's a new no-code tool called Xano. Xano is this, they just got $1 million in funding, but it's the no-code data, it's like they're competing against Airtable to be the solution to get you from no-code to high-code. So they're gonna be the gap that once you break your no-code apps on your interfaces, Xano will say, hey, you wanna build a custom front end? Use Xano. It handles your API keys, it handles all the user authentication and stuff, so that's kind of, oh, am I out of time?
Collective idea.
Oh, Collective Idea, right. Collective Idea could use Xano once you graduated from no code to build an entire front-end interface,
Right.
like from the ground up.
Yeah, so if you get to the point where you've gone as far as you can on your own with no code, and you need now to bump up professional, just like Collective Idea, MRS in there, does
That's
app
right.
development, we have a database of other people.
So when you say
Yeah.
No code to high code, are you talking about hiring people or to actually
Yeah.
build okay.
Let's talk about scale a little bit, because no code will get you to in front of users faster, and it'll get you your app built very quickly. And then you have to start either investing in your no code solution or no code solution, or just getting out of it and going high code, right? You will spend as much money in some cases building a no code solution month to month as you would a high code solution. Now that's really dependent on how fast you're growing and a bunch of other factors. Your team's skill set is also part of it, right? So don't be fooled by no code and thinking it's gonna be the cheapest solution long term if you're not technical, right? If you have some technical ability. Go ahead, yeah, just.
But like, this looks cheap. No, sorry.
Oh yeah, yeah.
This doesn't look cheap, it looks inexpensive. So my guess is you're probably on like a free tier on these services, so could you just mention like
Yeah.
what would this tool, like if you launched this today to us at Surge, what would it cost you month to month? And then when would that start to break? Like when, or not break, but like,
Right.
you know, when would it start to get expensive?
So these are the free versions. You think so? It really gets expensive. It depends on the no-code app. I'll start there.
This app.
This
What about
app right here?
In this marketplace, it's growing
So
like
this
crazy.
marketplace, if it's growing like crazy, I think I wouldn't need this. I don't think I need to upgrade it until our users demand something else. We need a forum on this app now. Oh, we need a forum? Well, I could integrate a forum into software, or I could buy Discourse, which is a $200 a month tool, forum, pre-built, incredible, lots of great tools and features. Let me go do that instead, right? If you wanted to create like a Slack competitor, let's say I'm trying to think something crazy here in this specific product marketplace, then you're starting to say, all right, maybe I move off of Software to Bubble, and I'll use Bubble to build all the features that come into Slack. Voice, video calls, allowing users to create channels, creating admins that allow new Slack channels to be created. That's where you start hitting like high levels, when you break the app, I guess. It really is dependent on what you need, right, too. So I would say that in this particular case, because I've catered the problem to the solution, I can't see it breaking.
Is there a price tier that you'll break at some point along the way, like usage, number of users that will bump you up? And
Let's see. I guess I don't know.
Airbase has a limit per base of how many records you can have, how much data.
That's true.
But yeah, and then
Oh, yeah.
most of these sites will have like an interaction limit, user limit.
Yeah, so right, for this one, I can only do 5 members if I do this one. Oh, so maybe that's what I gotta do. If I have more than 5 members or something, I gotta bump it up to $65. But you're never like going crazy, right? So go ahead.
If I could give an example, just
Yeah.
we went from no code to high code at A6 Repairs 4 years ago.
Oh,
And
sweet.
we started with Airtable only, and we used it for managing, so it's a restaurant technology company, and we manage support requests and inventory for restaurants, because we put all their data into Airtable. And we had to figure out ways to manipulate Airtable to stay under their paywalls as long as possible.
Yeah.
But we didn't pay a penny for Airtable for the first couple of months, and we got to $20,000 in monthly revenue before we committed to writing any code. But then we got a problem, we had a real user problem where our staff couldn't move easily between all the tables in Airtable. So then we invested just $5,000 a month in custom software development to make that experience easier. So we're still using Airtable for the customers, but our internal team was using custom software. Our internal team had a higher tolerance for roughness, so we didn't have to make the perfect user experience. It was really nice. So we just kind of incrementally scaled our investment in our custom software proportionate to the revenue we were making.
That's a perfect example of that. And that's where you start hitting scale. It's so unique to the individual and the company at times. You kind of just have to come up with that solution and know what you got to do. Double down on no code or go high code, right? So in our company, we kind of doubled down on the Bubble app development. So we just add more and more developers to speed up development and make it happen. Yeah, we have, I guess to like talk about numbers. So yeah, Airtable has a 10,000 record limit, and so we're actually moving to Xano, the no-code tool Xano, to help with that.
What is the record limit there?
I think it's unlimited, or you can actually pay more. You can do that with Airtable too. You can buy the enterprise plan, but I think even then, there's a limit to what Airtable can do.
I think, yes. One of the affiliated companies here ran into that with Airtable, where even their enterprise plan, there were limits that, now that was limits I think in concurrent data access or something like that. It wasn't row limit, but they were running into, even the enterprise plan couldn't support that, so.
Yeah. So yeah, and some companies don't have a ton of data that they're running through, so you may not need that. So yeah, I'll show you real quick. Maybe like, if you guys, well, I don't need to show you. Typeform is a really great app. It's a great form builder. So if you wanted a lot of people use no code to create like a smoke and mirror effect for a prototype. So you can have a website and use a Typeform, and you can build and onboard almost any user in any situation without much confusion, and the users will think that you have a full built-out app behind the scenes. A lot of people use it to validate their app, so you create a website with Typeform in there, and I'll show you Typeform actually real quick while we generate more questions here. And the cool thing about Typeform is not just a form builder, it's also a calculator. Like you can have it do one of those BuzzFeed quizzes, like which Disney princess are you, or which like tool in your toolbox you are. Answer these 5 questions to describe who you are, and then it'll pick what your result is. So tons of templates in Typeform. You can create an order form within Typeform. So you want a bike, you want to buy a bike, custom solution bikes. Pick what you want out of your bike, and then at the end of that Typeform, it'll say $500 or $10,000, depending on what you're looking for. Select, and it'll bring you to Stripe checkout. It's just like a wizard, kind of a solution. If you guys, onboarding wizard. Kind of see these things here. Let me show you the one that there's a really great one for Yankee candles. So now you can select which type of candle you like. I can tell this crowd here loves candles. So, but this is like, I know, there's a lot of use. A lot of people have made kind of filter out their leads using Typeform. You can do a lot of tagging through that registration process. This is the free tier, so there's like logic jumps and all that stuff you can kind of get into. Highly recommend this tool, but I don't think it makes sense to kind of show you what it can do. Talk to me maybe afterwards if we can figure out some ways to use Typeform. But I just wanted to highlight that because the tool definitely worth looking into in your no-code endeavors. So,
Question.
Yeah.
When you're building out your concepts for your prototypes and you're going, from nothing, what's your best or favorite tool to use to organize like your workflows or your concepts? Is it just paper and pen? You mentioned that, which I like that too.
Yeah.
I just thought maybe, do you do like a Lucid chart or Lucid?
I do use Miro right now because it's accessible. I think a lot of people, I've used Lucidchart before, but people hate UML. They think it's too hard to read, and then it's really hard to share that information. So Miro is just easier for me. But I'm more collaborative, right? So I'm a product manager. I try to keep myself out of the technology stuff just to support them. So I use stuff that's more like Miro and that kind of thing. I will draw things in Miro. I kind of use, or Figma is another like UX UI prototyping tool, which is also, if you guys are really like kind of going back to my slide about how you guys design, if you have a skill set that's more design centric, you can find tools that like no-code tools that support your design ability versus your, maybe if you have a stronger data skill set, you can find tools that will fill in the gap for your lack of being able to design. So you might find a block builder that connects to Airtable. That's why I use Softer and why I used Airtable is because I'm more of a data management guy and I'm not a design guy. I hire people to work in Bubble because they know how to use the blank canvas while I help support data management and architecture and workflows, to answer your point. So Lucid, I guess I use a tool that's most accommodating for my team. Anybody have come in here with like an app idea that they want to apply to no code, that they just want to spitball out there? You guys have any other questions in as well? So
Yeah, I've got an interesting spin. I'll run past you.
Sure.
It's a customer portal, which is not the new part, but it's customer portal to access a lot of internal infrastructure that already exists, very well developed, gets into phone systems and whatnot. The app in mind would be to implement a low-code solution would be very front end heavy, but need to be able to access back-end infrastructure that could already be built. So tap into more traditional high-code back-end resources. So are there any of these more modern low-code builders that will let you let go of sort of the back-end and bring your own?
yeah, so that's a great question, right? There's like existing infrastructure, it sounds like you have, and you want to make an interface, a no-code interface, and apply it to that.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a tool out there depending on your interface, right? So what I would do if I were you is Google no-code interfaces for Microsoft Access, right? Or for MySQL, something like that connects, and then you go through that long blog tutorial, figure out why your system doesn't. You do the troubleshooting, and eventually you might have that merge happen. And it might even be something like you can connect Airtable to your existing tool solution, right? Not that Airtable is like the best thing in the world, and I'm a zealot for it, right? A little bit, but that's a way to approach it. If there's not a solution, it might be worth thinking about upgrading your backend a little bit, right? That's where data accessibility becomes a business goal of yours. And if your business wants to have your data more accessible to provide better service to your customers, consider upgrading your backend so that you can make it more accessible, not just for that one interface, but for like the landscape of no code and whatever business decision you make in the future. Right?
What about in the middle? If there was even like a RESTful service that was out there, pretend there was third-party
Perfect.
services that you
Yeah.
were building on your CRM's API. Can I bring in those if the connectors don't exist, for example, like with Zapier?
Yes.
Yeah.
So right, depends, right? All that kind of, yeah, it all depends a little bit. Because it's an existing solution you have,
Yeah.
you kind of are stuck with that because of where your starting point is. So if Zapier doesn't work, if you can find a RESTful API, those are the types of things you can consider.
What's the infrastructure you're using?
An asterisk, like a phone PBX running on AWS,
Okay,
a couple other like monitoring services, all kind of that environment.
gotcha. But you have RESTful access to it, so that's REST API?
We think that we have to build it no matter which way we go.
You will have to build it? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, you might be able to find something, a lot of this is just like transforming data from one place to the next. Like you might need to get it from the PBX to like Google, like to Google Data Studio, right? You get it there,
There you
and
go.
then there's a bunch of no-code solutions that will interface with Google Data Studio, Google BigQuery, right? So go warehouse your data somewhere else, and then there will be a bunch of no-code options. If you are working with like webhooks and RESTful APIs, and you use something like Pipedream, which is a no-code interface for just getting data from like one step in the funnel to the next, and that's a bad use.
Great.
Cool.
Great example, right? So, depend on the solution. And Bryce Scott, yeah, I think that's like something I want to harp on here a little bit. So, great, we were running out of time, and that's perfect because I'm about to segue into this step. We have some surveys that I'd love for you guys to fill out. I really, really would love to keep a group like this going, because I think I was really surprised by the amount of people that wanted to hear and talk about no code. And I think we should, if anybody here is interested in building anything related to no code, we all have shared experiences. We're all gonna go out hypothetically and slog through the landscape that is no code and low code. Bryce has different experiences related to no code than I, and Chris, right, here has experience with like Buddy Boss and WordPress. I think there is so much value in having a community local here that can share that knowledge and that slog that they've been through to double down on their efforts, right? So you don't have to go read the forums of Divi Builder to build your next damn thing, right? You might have somebody in this community or this group of people right here that might have that answer for you right away. Case and example, I didn't know the answer to your question. Bryce knew about Google Data Studio and all those interfaces like that, right? So we can do that tenfold. We get more people in a room. So you should have those surveys on your chair. So also there's some questions on there. Check the boxes and write your contact information as well, and we'll talk about building a group or something.
Anybody needs a pen or something to lean on, let me know.
A pen.
I don't have that.